Welcome to another build video presented by Enterprise Hobby, the distributor for Align products in North America. This is the fourth video in the 6-part series building the T-Rex 700X Dominator Super Combo Kit. We're going to break this video into two parts, so there's going to be part 4A and part 4B. The videos are going to cover the tail assembly for the 700X. In this video, we will be covering page number 12, 13, 14, and 15. We're going to break it up into two sections, part A and part B. That way it's a little smaller of a video file for everyone to follow. Unfortunately, I lost part of the video, or a lot of it, for this section, and Jordan Morris, one of our team pilots, has come to the rescue. I'm going to turn over the next part of the video in the build series to him. Enjoy.
Okay, now we're going to install the tail pitch assembly linkage, and basically we're going to start here and work our way out. And I like to go ahead and get my screws where they're going to be so I can see how it all goes together as laid out like the instructions show. One thing I want to mention is here on the slide shaft, this goes through two bearings, and then this piece here, the T-type arm they call it, threads onto it and locks it in place. I've always found that these have been loctited from the factory. I held this one and tried to turn this and it wouldn't even turn, so I'm confident that that's thread locked and I'm not going to take it apart. The other thing is it's also a pinch clamp on that, so there's a screw that goes through this way and a screw that goes down that way. So that'll be fine, just like it is out of the bag. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and start with the tail pitch bell crank mount, which goes onto this. I'm just going to shake our Loctite up here real quick and get that going. And you're going to need your 1.5, your 2, and a Phillips for doing the tail section here. And I'm going to just assemble all this finger tight and then come back and go through and tighten up the things that need to be. Next, we have the actual tail pitch bell crank here. And there's a top and a bottom to this. The line's at the top. This is at the bottom, and it actually attaches to the rudder control arm. As soon as I get this on here, I'll back that ball off and Loctite it up. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that down. Make sure you note that it goes in the outer hole. that goes in from the bottom of the assembly. Just test fitting here. Obviously it fits because I took it all apart. Make sure you get this down in the hole and not really on the face of any of these, because all these have bearings that ride on the face. So I always just do a little wipe like that. That one doesn't want to go in there. Keep dropping it. There we go. Just finger tight for now. Then next, we're going to slide on the bell crank collar and the T-type arm. Sorry, I was looking at what they call these in the manual, just so that there's no confusion. And I always like to make sure that it slides nice and smooth before anything's assembled here. So I'll come back and apply an oil to the shafts after the assembly's done. You could do it now too if you want to. I just don't want to get it all over me. So that looks good and everything lines up. Pull it off, I'm gonna go ahead and put my Loctite in there. And then just make sure everything still slides good. No binding. Nice. Now we're going to go ahead and put the 2 screws in that the socket screws. They're M2 by 8mm. One goes in this. One goes in down, one goes in pointing up. You just look for the threads. I'm just going to hand tighten those for now. And then next we're going to put the control links on, which use these brass screws and then these normal screws with a collar on them. There is no up or down on these as far as I could tell, and there's no indication in the manual. So there's a number 2 on one side, or a 1 and a 2, and then the other side doesn't have anything. So I'm just double checking. I don't see anything in here about the reason there's a 1 or a 2 on them. So I'm going to go ahead and put my loctite in. These, one screw goes in one way and one goes in the other. Tighten, just finger tight. There's some of these, these 2 screws, and then the ones that go in out here. Actually, it's mostly just these. These out here go into the blade grips. You just want to make sure that they're not too tight, that you don't have free movement, because you want to make sure that these stay nice and free. And let the Loctite do its job. So after that's on, we're going to go ahead and put our tail blade holder on. And this is where you want to make sure that you get the line pointed out, because once you stick it on here, you can't rotate these around. And you want to line your set screw up. There's a small divot here for the set screw. You want to make sure you get that lined up. This is one instance where I put the Loctite on the set screw. Because I want to make sure that's good and locked in there. And I'll just go ahead and tighten that down. Then you're going to bring the control link over and insert the screw with the collar, and it's a 2.5 by 8 millimeter, and then the brass collar. So what the collar does that's on this screw is it basically bottoms out against the arm here, and then it allows you pretty much not to over tighten the bolt. If you do, you can still crush that though, so you don't want to get Godzilla on it, but you do want to make sure that it's tight. And then just make sure everything still works nice and free. And then come back and tighten everything down. And like I said, just make sure you don't over tighten these Phillips screws, because then what happens is you create too much friction and this doesn't move freely. Check all your bolts. Okay. We're good there. So now we're going to move on to the next step. They show the tail blades going on too, but I wait until I'm doing my gyro setup to actually install the tail blades. So pretty sure everybody can figure that one out. Okay, so now we're gonna work on the torque tube assembly. So what I've done, the first thing we're gonna do is actually set up our bearings on the torque tube itself. And what I've done is I've gone ahead and measured out the 26 centimeters or 10 3/16 for standard. And what I've done is I've measured, that measurement they show is from the center of the collar to the center of the bearing. And then I measured from this end, same way, and you end up with just about the same distance between here. So what I've done is I've went ahead and marked where the bearing needs to sit. I've marked both sides, and I'm going to prep it for either super glue. You can use a CA. Loctite makes one. I actually have all the hobby style CAs, so that works well too. Or you can actually use green, the R48 green Loctite that comes with the kit if you don't have any CA, and it works just as well also. So we're going to go ahead and glue these on, and then I'll come back and we'll put the actual rubber pieces over these, and then get everything siliconed up and get it inside the actual tail boom. Okay, so we glued our bearings on, and you want to make sure that you don't glue the bearing itself and keep it from rolling. So just check those bearings and make sure that they're not glued. So you want to find bag 700HT6A, and inside of that you're going to find the pushrod guide, the pushrod ends, and then you're also going to find the rubber grommets that go over the bearings that actually ride inside the tail tube. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually slide these on, and we're going to work them over the bearing. Make sure they're centered on the bearing. And the reason there's bearings on this, obviously, is to keep it from jump roping in the tail tube. So when things are long like this, they'll tend to jump rope when they're attached to each end. So these bearings just keep everything running smooth and keep the vibrations out. So we've got that ready. Now what we're going to want to do is spray silicone on the rubber pieces here, and then spray silicone all down the inside of the tail tube. Sorry, the camera angle doesn't allow for you to see the whole tube. But I'm going to go ahead and spray that and get this installed. You can use this piece of plastic that comes inside, and it's designed to slide over this and push on those rubber grommets. And actually, let's see what do they actually call those? Torque tube bearing holder. So you can push against the torque tube bearing holder once it's all siliconed, and it helps you get it actually in the tube. I've found that with a good quality silicone, they slide right in anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and spray that, and we're going to set these parts aside for now. And once we get that in there, then we'll start the assembly of the rest of the tail tube. Okay, so now we've got the torque tube in the tail boom. The WD-40 silicone lubricant worked really well. It's their new line of specialist products that they make. You can get it at AutoZone or any auto parts store. So it worked really well, went right in. I just kind of evened it up inside the tail tube. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and slide the pushrod guide on. And the front of the boom, the Align 700 is closer to the front of the boom. There's also this slot that fits inside the tail case. And so you know that this is the front left side. And then the back side just has the hole for the alignment pin here when we put the tail hub assembly on. So I just bring this in about halfway, maybe a little bit forward, just about the back of the helicopter there for now. And then so what we're going to do next is we're actually going to attach the back end here according to the instructions. This all goes together. Sometimes I actually will put things together a little bit different, but for the purposes of the video, we're going to do it in the order the book shows here. And basically I just won't tighten down the front or the back all the way, and once I get it on the helicopter, I'll make sure and square everything up and then tighten it down for the final assembly. The other thing they show is attaching the tail boom brace set back here, and they want you to put some tape around it. They say Scotch tape or possibly electrical tape. You really don't know where to put it until it's on the helicopter. So we'll go back and do that. I'll do that not on the video because it's pretty straightforward on how that goes on. But you do want to make sure that you put something here to soak up a little bit of the space so that this can't slide. What I do is, again, my good friend Jim Robinson, he showed me how to use the JB Weld on this, and it just it keeps it from sliding around at all. And if you're really into hard 3D, I'm not, but if you're into hard 3D, I actually recommend the JB Weld approach. And you can get it back off if you need to, because this tube's not really carbon fiber, it's actually aluminum. So you just scratch it up and then get everything set where you want it. Apply just a little bit of JB Weld to the top and the bottom, and then go ahead and put your clamp set together. So, but that's what you have to do once you get this actually on the helicopter. So let's go ahead and put the tailpiece on. So basically what another thing that Jim showed me is you can use your align grease, or if you went ahead and got some red grease, is to go ahead and grease these splines. And what this does is it reduces the wear, and it also reduces some noise, which is nice. And if you can get grease into one of these monoject, you can get them on eBay or Tower Hobbies, anywhere, any hobby place usually. It's really nice to apply grease this way because you can be very precise with it and not make a mess. Like I said, he told me this quiets the gear train down, and it also reduces the wear in here on the plastic, metal meeting the plastic. So it's a really nice mod that he does. And basically what you want to do is line the holes up. Get your vertical fin ready. Get your Loctite. Like I said, I'm not going to tighten this down completely because I'm going to adjust it once the whole assembly is on the helicopter. And this pin here just lines up through there. And this will be your 2.5. You just want to make sure that the tail boom locks in and that pin goes in through both the tail gear case and the tube. Okay, so our tail gear case assembly is now mounted to the tube. Just don't forget to go back and square everything up with the helicopter itself, and then tighten these bolts down. So next we're going to do the front case, and I'm going to go ahead and just slip these back in here. This one won't stay probably, no. So now what they want you to do is take your lock nuts, M3 lock nuts, and insert them into the left side of the case if you're looking from the back of the helicopter towards the front. And make sure you don't use Loctite when you're using nylocks. It'll actually eat the nylon. And we're just going to put these in here a little bit. We're not going to tighten it up. Just until you feel it hit the nylon. All right, now inside the tail case, you can't see it on the video, there's a slot over here. And that is what lines up with this slot. So you want to make sure that when you insert this, that it goes all the way in to that slot. And then over here, there's a set screw that actually lines up with this hole here. So, and make sure you don't over tighten this screw, because the thread is only in this plastic. There's nothing here for it to thread into. It's just basically a pin. So the threads are here, and if you over tighten it, you'll strip that out. So I'm going to go ahead and apply the grease to this end as well. Then I'm going to go ahead and stick it in the tail case. I'm going to stand it vertical, work it down. Make sure the gears are lined up. And there it is. And you want to turn the back and make sure that those gears are moving nice. Now, like I said, I'm going to thread this in here. And then I'll square everything up on the fuselage of the helicopter. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and install the push rod for the tail servo, tail rotor. They want this approximately 330 millimeters or 33 centimeters from this point, which basically is almost about the center. So what we're going to do is install our ball links on the end here of each side, and then this metal piece goes in the center here, and then we're going to go ahead and clamp that, flip this over, and just put the clamp screw in. Like I said, normally I do all this once it's actually on the helicopter. And I'm going to go ahead and attach this back here for right now, just to keep it safe. And then what they want you to do is go ahead and put some super glue here where this rides. So you want to super glue this metal bushing to the push rod itself. And then once that's complete, you would go ahead and mount your tail boom support brackets on. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the helicopter now, and then I'll come back and we'll do this part, and I'll show you how to bolt this part to the fuselage. Okay, so we slid the tail boom assembly into the mainframe assembly or fuselage. I've got my Loctite in each of the 5 holes on each side. These 3 here get the socket head collar screws, and then the 2 that are in the plastic parts, they just get the normal socket head screw. So I'm going to go ahead and bolt this together and flip the heli up and get the other side. And then we'll go ahead and put on our tail boom braces, line everything up, and we'll be done with the tail boom assembly. All right, so I've got my tail boom and the whole assembly attached to the main frames. I've tightened down all the bolts in the main frame for the tail tube assembly. What we're going to do now is go ahead and set up the tail boom supports, and basically not that many parts left. We've got the clamp here, and basically here you want to make sure that the bolt holes go forward, and then it's pretty self-explanatory. This goes on top like that, and then you got to make sure that when you clamp that down, this is on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together. Okay, so we've got this through here. These bolts go right through the top of the horizontal stab, and then you want to make sure that you've got the ring part pointed forward. And we're going to match it up here. And we're just going to lightly put those in so it can still slide and move around. We don't want to clamp it down just yet. And take your tail boom supports and put the bolts through. That takes a 3mm. Just lightly put those in too, so that you can still move them around. Then you're going to want to come down to the main frame here and attach them in. And since you've already got the landing gear assembly all put together and the bottom plate, go ahead and put your Loctite on your bolt. You might be able to get in there with the paper clip. So now that pretty much sets your distance for where your horizontal and the boom clamp is for the boom supports. Now once you're here, you want to make sure that you get it all square so that this is 90 degrees to the mainframe verticals. Now, since you have this where it needs to go, you go ahead and you take this top off and you mark it, and you either put your Scotch tape or electrical tape around it, or you go ahead and you JB weld these on like I'm going to do. But at this point, the whole tail section's done, short of setting up the actual length on the servo rod. And that's done during your gyro setup. Once you turn your gyro on and your arm on your servo for your rudder control is at 90 degrees, you want to make sure that there's about 10 millimeters of deflection on the tail blades. And there is a good example of what that should look like later on in the manual under your gyro setup, and it's on page, I'm getting there. It's on page 22, and it's approximately 10 millimeters of deflection, and it shows a good little diagram there on how to figure that out. So that concludes the tail boom section and the tail case and the whole assembly and attaching it to the helicopter.
This concludes 4B. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and visit enterprisehobby.com for the latest information of Align's products, releases, videos, and other items. Thanks for flying Align.